Chapter 23 Honeymoon Funk. Gary and I had finally arrived at the city's Hyatt Regency. This was the night it was going to happen. We now possessed a powerful sheet of paper, a marriage certificate, which entitled us to all the hot and heavy supersonic sex we could enjoy forevermore without a single shred of guilt. Gary took his time when hanging his pressed tux in the closet, making sure the crease lines were perfectly lined up. Who cared about neatness at a time like this? My mind was on one thing only. While my new husband unpacked his suitcase, I chose to bounce my hiney on the bed, my crotch quivering at the thought of what sex might feel like, the rhythm, the passion, the energy expenditure. I was never allowed to go to X-rated movies, but I did see a drawing of a penis that some sex-crazed girl passed around in 7th grade art. Finally, the time had come, and I was dying to know what it felt like to have Gary's male hardness inside of me. After a hot bath, I waltzed over to my suitcase and pulled out my skimpy baby doll negligee, slipping it over my soft, ample curves. The sound of Gary's shower hummed in the background while I set up my portable cassette player on the dresser and flipped it on to Roberta Flack's Feel Like Making Love to You. In front of the room's cheval mirror, I swiveled my lace-covered hips in a slow, seductive manner. I couldn't wait to have my husband's large hands all over me. Applying my favorite cherry lip gloss, I smooshed my lips together to even out the color, then applied my eyeshadow. Ocean blue turned my innocent eyes into deep-set, sinful bedroom eyes. I barely recognized myself all dolled up. I hoped Gary would like my look. The shower was still humming as I fumbled through my cosmetic bag, fetched the bottle of my sweet-scented perfume, and spritzed it in the air as I stepped into it. Right then I heard a big splash of water. Was he swimming in there? Settling into a seductive pose on the king-size mattress, my plummeting cleavage rose and fell with each anxious breath as I waited and waited. Still waiting. Finally, Gary emerged in the doorway. Bonier than a graveyard and paler than a Halloween glow stick, I was taken aback at how different he looked without clothes. And where were all his chest hairs? My mother had often reminded me that a girl can't have everything, so I concentrated on his smile, and dimples, and full head of wavy hair. Smile, dimples, hair. That's what I needed to focus on. Mom also told me to use Vaseline for the sex act. Reserved and uptight, she couldn't even look me in the eye when saying it. My poor, rigid mother would rather die than talk about sex. Back when we were dating, Gary mentioned that before he read the Book of Mormon and converted to the church, he had fooled around with some girls in high school. Nothing too serious. At least he retained his virginity. At age 22, my bona fide triple D boobies were screaming for experienced hands. I couldn't wait for him to rip off my lingerie and play rough. Not that I was into kinky sex. I just wanted him to work them over. Now for the drum roll moment. The moment I've been waiting for since I grew boobs. Ready? 15 minutes later, it was over. Almost a decade of anticipation for what? My hopes had been dashed, and sex hurt. It hurt a lot. Here's how it happened. My new husband climbs into bed, slips off my blue baby dolls, and plays sissy tetherball with my girls. Then he enters my Vaseline-filled vertical smile. It immediately turns into a frown, but I ignore the pain. Admittedly, the sex could have been better. Because I had a boob fetish, I wished he would have focused his energy on my triple Ds. Yet I still found the act of sex mind-bending despite the lousy foreplay. If I were to insist on having more, I may have had a hobbling gait for weeks. Yet the thought of going to town on Gary's man toy made my thighs quiver. That night as my husband snored away, I tossed and turned. How could he sleep peacefully when we only did it once? Usually it was the guy that couldn't get enough. What was going on? As he continued to grunt in his sleep, I obsessed about his penis. He didn't even feel pain with sex like I did. Shouldn't he have been the one waking me? His penis and its magical growing powers fascinated me. The way it sprouted north toward his navel, as opposed to sticking straight up toward the sky when he was lying on his back. I really thought that's what penises did. Stuck straight up. I wanted to watch the magic again, but I didn't have the heart to wake him. For the next few nights, I obsessed about his unit. I was aching to be filled. I craved emotional and physical closeness and was not getting any. When we did make love, Gary's head bobbed back and forth like a bobblehead doll, and his barren eyes were nowhere near his face. My trysts with the tub had been so much more magical than lovemaking. Warm running water had set the standard pretty high. Why couldn't I feel the same growing intensity when having sex with my husband? Although I heard Gary hollering out a few times when we were doing it, I don't think either of us knew how to get me to that magical place. As our vacation came to an end, I was hugely disappointed. My new spouse was a healthy, red-blooded 21-year-old male on a relaxing, stress-free honeymoon. Yet he couldn't seem to rouse his sleepy Peter a third time in 5 days. I felt so rejected and unsexy. Gary noticed I was feeling down and came up with an excuse. He said men don't recover as quickly from an orgasm as women do. That didn't make sense. Recover from what? Looking at my husband from across the sheet, for a moment it was like I'd been sucked back into the temple. I breathed in far too much quiet. If only I had married Chad, we'd be laughing our guts out over nothing. And I bet the sex would have been over-the-top sublime. But I couldn't go there. I now had a husband that I vowed to be faithful to. When the world changes full speed around you, silence can be healing. But not this silence. It spoke of disconnection, loneliness, and utter disappointment. Without much action on the mattress, I was so depressed I wanted to cry. I couldn't shake the funk. I wondered if I was the one with the problem. Am I oversexed? Am I a nymphomaniac? Can nymphos still go to heaven? After we returned home and settled into our new apartment, Gary told me he had a touch of the flu during our honeymoon. That would have been nice to know. I don't understand why he kept that from me. No wonder he couldn't get it up. We eventually learned how to make each other happy in the bedroom, and despite Gary's quiet nature, I gradually became more fulfilled. I even saw him as a spiritual giant. Compared to the life I had before, he seemed to be the answer to my many prayers. Through time, I even conquered my weight problem. I was no longer obsessed with food. Now I was a purposeful wife. That hole in my heart was gradually closing, getting smaller, until the unthinkable happened, and I could no longer look at him.